Originally, I wasn't going to say anything because there was already so many people making videos on this remake and chastising Rachel Zegler on her opinions on the original 1937 Snow White movie, but it was only after watching Michael Zero's video on the test screening of this remake that made me want to express my opinions about this. I will link his video down below. With all that said, let's get into it. There are so many videos that point out the many issues with this remake before the trailer has even dropped, but the biggest issue that I think everyone can agree upon that is hurting the little success this film will have is the lead actress. Rachel Zegler is entitled to her opinion, but so am I, and here's what I have to say about her. She's a brat. I think she thinks way too much of herself and doesn't seem all that grateful for this opportunity that she's getting. Because, let's face it, if not for all this woke nonsense, she would not have been the first choice for this role. And I gotta say, the comment she made about her male co-star sounded like she didn't want him in the film at all. Also, did anyone else get the vibe that she was disappointed that it wasn't a woman that was her love interest in the film?
We have a different approach to what I'm sure a lot of people will assume is a love story just because, like, we cast a guy in the movie. Right. Andrew Burnap, great dude. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think everyone's going to have their assumptions about what it's actually going to be, but it's really not about the love story at all, which is really, really wonderful. And whether or not she finds love along the way is anybody's guess until 2024. All of Andrew's scenes could get cut. Who knows? It's Hollywood, baby.
I can only hope that all this backlash that Rachel Zegler is getting will humble her, or at the very least make her think twice before opening her mouth. I haven't heard anything recent about her, but who knows, that might all change by the time this video comes out. I don't think there's necessarily anything bad with her being truthful about how she feels about the 1937 film. For a young kid, some of the scenes probably was pretty scary. I too didn't particularly care for Snow White as a kid either, or Sleeping Beauty, but as an adult, I've come to realize what an absolute masterpiece Sleeping Beauty is, and more importantly, how historical Snow White truly is. While it's not the first full-length animated movie in history, that title goes to The Adventures of Prince Ahmed, directed by Lottie Reiner in 1926. Apologies for mispronouncing the name. The difference between these two movies is that Lottie's movie is entirely shadow puppets. As groundbreaking as this film is, there's this disconnect where we can't fully get invested in the characters or the story because of that factor. However, with Snow White, because we do see these expressions, we are able to connect more with these characters, which helps us get invested in the story, which was the whole purpose for this film existing. Walt Disney knew that he could always get a laugh out of someone by showing them a cartoon. That was kind of the whole point of animated shorts. They were used to educate and address serious topics in a fun, comedic way, specifically for kids. However, Walt Disney wanted to know if he could invoke other emotions from people with cartoons. Specifically, he wanted to see if he could make people cry. That was the inspiration for Snow White. If not for Snow White, we would not have the iconic Disney movies that we all love. Or movies such as Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, How to Train Your Dragon, or The Prince of Egypt. I'd even go as far as to say this would have probably affected animated series too, such as The Simpsons, Futurama, Batman, Gargoyles. I don't think people realize how much Snow White historically changed the landscape of entertainment, and it pissed me off when I hear not only Rachel Zegler, but so many others crudely talk about these iconic films and how they're supposedly problematic and need to be changed. As if that's somehow going to validate these remakes more than the originals that they're based off of. As for the story, the very first time that I got an inkling for the plot, the Huntsman immediately came to mind, and I was surprised that not that many people was talking about how similar Disney Snow White was sounding to the Huntsman, and then I watched one of Mike Zero's video about the test screening of Snow White. The things he talked about that was allegedly in the movie made me think of another movie. I don't know if anyone remembers this movie. It was made in 1989, and wow, I did not know that movie was that old. I thought it was made in the late 90s or early 20s. Anyway, I'm talking about the one and only Happily Ever After. This movie scared the shit out of me as a kid, but I really liked it, and I know for a fact that I watched it more than Disney's Snow White. The story takes place after Snow White and her prince rides off into the sunset. The evil queen is dead, but in this rendition, she had a brother, Malice, and oh man is he a piece of work. He wants revenge for the death of his sister and goes after Snow White and her prince. The couple separates, and now Snow White makes her way back to the Seven Dwarfs' cottage, but finds that they have left, and now their female cousins, the dwarf elves, have taken residence in the cottage. They are the reason that made me think of this movie, because they have powers, specifically elemental powers, and Mike mentioned in his video that one of the 7 diverse people in the woods could manipulate the weather. In Happily Ever After, Thunderella, the youngest member, was the one that could manipulate the weather. Are you seeing the similarities? I'm not condemning this remake for taking inspiration from other movies, that's to be expected. However, I think the issue that everyone is having with all these changes is that the original story isn't being expanded upon, but instead is being altered into something else completely. Some people might argue that the Snow White and the Huntsman was a different version to the classic fairy tale that no one really had much of an issue with, but the thing about that was, it wasn't a remake to a already existing movie. As a result, there was no pressure to make it identical or similar to any previously existing version by that studio. That's the real issue with making these remakes. There will always be that comparison to the original, and 9 times out of 10, the original will reign supreme over the remake. Final thoughts, if everything that Mike said in the video is remotely true, I feel confident in saying that this film is dead on arrival. Maybe it can be salvaged if the people in charge can get their head out of their asses, but with the strike going on, I'm not sure much can be done except maybe double their editor's salary. Despite whatever they choose to do, the money has already been spent on what they have currently, and the reputation of the studio has already been sullied, not to mention their lead actress's attitude is not helping matters. I think it's safe to say that this movie is a lost cause, and honestly, I wish Disney would stop making these remakes for their own good. These remakes have done more damage to their reputation than maybe even Bob Iger has. Who knows? Sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to remember what the company was founded on and the cause of their previous success. There's no way to end this on a positive note, so I'll just end it here. If you enjoyed the video, like and subscribe.